I was standing on the edge of the old wooden bridge, the river roaring beneath me like it wanted to swallow all my pain. My hands trembled. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would break through my chest. I was only 14. I had tears running down my face and a bottle of pills in one hand. I looked at the sky and whispered, "God, if you are real, save me. Because I can't take this anymore." The night before, my own uncle, had come into my room again. And this time when I screamed, my mother rushed in. Thought she would save me. I thought she would finally protect me. But instead she slapped me. "You deserve this," she shouted. "You're always looking for attention, wearing those tight clothes and acting like a woman when you're still a girl. If he touches you, it's your fault." I collapsed to the ground, crying. I begged her to believe me. I begged her to love me. But she turned her back on me and walked out, leaving me with the monster. That was the night I decided to end it. I packed a small bag, stole the pills my grandmother used for her heart, and left the house. I was ready to die. Had no one cared. But as I stood there, just before I let go of everything, something strange happened. A voice in my heart whispered, "Don't do it. I'm not done with you yet." That voice saved me. And now, I will tell you the story of how I got to that bridge in the first place. When I was a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, my life wasn't always full of pain. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My father died in a car accident when I was just 3. I don't remember much about him. Only the photo in the hallway showing him smiling with me in his arms. My mother, Clara, worked hard. She cleaned houses, cooked in people's homes, and washed clothes to feed us. She didn't smile much, but she tried. She was always tired and quiet. Sometimes she'd sit by the window and stare into nothing for hours. When I turned 7, Uncle Raymond moved into our house. He was my father's younger brother, and Mama said he needed a place to stay while he looked for a job. First, he was kind. He brought me candies and called me Princess. He helped with the cooking and even fixed our broken fan. But slowly things changed. He started telling me to sit on his lap for too long. He would come into the bathroom while I was washing. He would hug me too tightly and whisper things that made my skin crawl. I didn't understand everything, but I knew it felt wrong. Told Mama once. I was only 8. She looked at me like I had said the worst thing in the world. "Don't ever say that again," she warned. "Raymond is family. He's helping us." After that, I stopped talking. I stopped trusting. When I turned 10, it got worse. Raymond would sneak into my room when Mama was sleeping. He would cover my mouth and whisper, "Don't make a sound or your mother will throw you out." I believed him. School, I was quiet. I didn't play much. I didn't make friends. My grades dropped, and my teachers called Mama to ask what was wrong. She blamed me. She told them I was lazy, that I didn't care. When I was 12, I started bleeding every month, and Mama told me I was a woman now. But I didn't feel like a woman. I felt like a broken child. One day, I found the courage to write everything in a letter. I left it under Mama's pillow and waited all night. The next morning, she didn't speak to me. She didn't even look at me. That evening, she burnt the letter in the fire and told me to go wash the dishes. I cried in silence. It was around this time that I started praying. I didn't know much about God, but I would kneel in my room and whisper, "If you're there, please help me." But help didn't come. One night when I was 13, I woke up to find Raymond sitting on my bed. This time he was drunk. His eyes were red and he smelled like smoke. He said things I still try to forget. I screamed. Mama ran in and I thought just maybe this time she would protect me. Instead, she slapped me across the face so hard I saw stars. "You're the one who started this," she yelled. "I see the way you walk around the house like a grown woman. You brought this on yourself." I couldn't believe it. My own mother. The woman who gave me life. She was choosing him. Raymond smirked behind her, not even afraid. That was the night I ran away. I spent the whole day walking through town, crying, hiding when I saw people I knew. I ended up near the old bridge on the edge of our village. I sat there for hours, watching the water rush by. I had the pills. I had the plan. I just needed the courage to let go. But that voice, that small voice inside me said, wait. And suddenly I felt something, warmth. Like someone was holding me. No one was there, but I felt it. I felt safe for a moment. Safe enough to step back from the edge. I fell to my knees and cried like never before. From that moment I knew something had changed. I didn't know what, but I knew I had to survive. I had to find help. I had to find hope. So I walked to the old church on the hill. I hadn't been there in years. I was dirty, tired, and scared. But when I knocked on the door, someone answered. It was Pastor John's wife, Grace. She looked at me, really looked at me, and instead of asking questions, she just opened her arms. I ran into her hug and sobbed. But what I didn't know was that Raymond had followed me. And what he did next would change everything. Raymond stood behind the bushes near the church gate, watching me cry in Grace's arms. His eyes were full of anger, and his breath reeked of alcohol and bitterness. He had followed me all the way from the bridge. I didn't know he had seen me leave. I didn't even know he cared enough to come after me. But he wasn't there to bring me home. He was there to silence me. As I sat inside the small church kitchen with a warm blanket over my shoulders, Grace gave me hot cocoa. She didn't ask too many questions, just told me I was safe now. Her kindness was strange to me. Felt like a dream. I hadn't felt safe or loved in so long that I didn't know how to accept it. I told her everything. I told her about Raymond, about Mama, about the night before and the bridge. She didn't interrupt. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Then she said something I'll never forget. You are not dirty. You are not to blame. What happened to you is not your fault. I broke down all over again. Pastor John came in a little while later. He sat beside me, listened, and then promised me that Raymond would never touch me again. They said they would take me to the police in the morning, that I could stay with them for the night. But Raymond didn't wait for morning. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping in the small guest room beside the church office. I heard a crash, glass breaking, then the loud roar of a man's voice. Where is she? It was Raymond. He had found us. I jumped out of bed, shaking. Grace ran into the room and pushed me into a small closet. Stay there. Don't come out until I tell you. I could hear everything. The shouting, the crashing. Pastor John trying to calm him down. Raymond yelling that I was his niece and had no right to run away. That I was trying to ruin his life with lies. Grace called the police. By the time they arrived, Raymond had flipped over chairs and broken 2 windows. He was screaming that I was the one who seduced him, that I had been begging for attention, that I was evil. The police tackled him to the floor. He fought back. But they handcuffed him and dragged him away. I watched it all from the closet, through a crack in the door. I was frozen. I couldn't believe what was happening. I couldn't believe he was finally gone. But that night after the police left, I saw something even more shocking. My mother. She came to the church an hour later. Not to check on me. Not to hug me. But to shout at Grace. You think you're saving her, she screamed. You don't know her. She's a liar. Snake. She's ruining our family. Grace didn't shout back. She simply stood tall and said, a child doesn't lie about pain like this. Your daughter needs love, not blame. Mama spat on the floor and stormed off into the dark. I wanted to run after her, to ask her why she didn't love me. But something inside me held me back. A small voice, stronger this time, told me to stay where I was, to stay with the people who believed me. That next morning I gave a full statement to the police. I told them everything Raymond had done for years. They opened a case. He was charged. But the damage was deep. The other kids at school heard about it. Some whispered behind my back. Others asked rude questions. A few teachers looked at me with pity, while others avoided me like I was a problem. Grace and Pastor John stood by me. They became the family I never had. They helped me see a counselor. I didn't want to talk at first. The memories were too heavy. But little by little I began to open up. I started to write in a journal. I started to draw again. I started to smile just a little. Then something amazing happened. I found my voice. One afternoon, my counselor asked me to speak to a small group of girls, other teens who had gone through things like me. I was nervous. My hands shook. My voice cracked. But I spoke. And when I did, I saw something in their eyes. Saw hope. Saw pain too. But mostly, they understood me. That day, I realized that my pain had a purpose. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one. But just when I thought life was beginning to heal, something terrible happened. Raymond got out on bail. He was back. And Mama took him in. I saw them together at the market one morning. She was smiling like nothing had ever happened. He looked straight at me and smirked. Then he mouthed the words, "I'm not done." My heart stopped. I dropped my basket and ran back to the church. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the window made me jump. Grace told me not to worry. She said the case was still strong. But I had seen evil, and I knew evil didn't go away quietly. A week later, while walking home from school, I saw a car slow down beside me. The window rolled down. "Raymond, get in," he said. "I just want to talk." Froze. Then I ran. I didn't stop until I got to the church gate. But the fear had returned. It wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. And I knew, deep down, he wasn't going to stop until he got what he wanted. That night I made a choice. I was going to protect myself, whatever it took. Because I knew now, no one was going to save me but me. But I had no idea what he was planning next. And when it happened, it would shake everything to the ground. It was a Sunday evening. The sky was dark, but not from clouds. It was just one of those sad, quiet nights when even the moon feels far away. Pastor John and Grace had taken me with them to a small church event in the next town. For a few hours I actually felt normal. I laughed with some girls, sang a little during worship, and even helped pass out food. But as we drove back home, I had this cold feeling in my stomach, like something wasn't right. When we got to the church house, the front door was open. Wide open. Pastor John stepped out of the car first, holding out his hand to stop me. "Stay in the car," he said. But I didn't listen. I followed close behind him and Grace. Inside, the living room was a mess. Books scattered. Chairs knocked over. The small wooden cross on the wall was broken in half. Someone had been there. Pastor John checked every room. No one was inside. But something was missing: my journal. The one where I had written all the details about Raymond. All the pain. All the abuse. All my thoughts, fears, and secrets. It was gone. I felt like someone had just ripped my chest open. That night I cried myself to sleep. I didn't know what Raymond wanted to do with my journal, but I knew it wasn't good. He wanted control. He wanted silence. He wanted me afraid. And he was getting what he wanted. The next day I didn't go to school. I couldn't even get out of bed. My body was shaking. Grace sat beside me, holding my hand, but even her warmth didn't stop the fear. I kept seeing his face, hearing his voice. I kept wondering how someone could hate me so much when I had done nothing wrong. Then, in the afternoon, it happened. My mother came to the church again. But this time she didn't come to shout. She came to slap me. Right there in front of Grace and Pastor John. "You had no right to put our family shame out there like that," she screamed. "Raymond is suffering because of your lies. You think you're holy now, staying with pastors and pretending to be a victim." Grace stood between us. "Enough," she said firmly. "You don't speak to her like that ever again." Mama's eyes were full of fire. "She's my child. I can say what I want." "No," Grace said, her voice calm but powerful. "A mother doesn't destroy her child. She protects her." My mother stood still for a moment, breathing heavy. Then she turned and walked out without another word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. That evening, Pastor John called the police and gave them an update about the break-in and the stolen journal. They said they would try to track Raymond's whereabouts, but it was a small town. Things moved slow. People whispered. Rumors spread faster than truth. That same night something strange happened. Grace found an envelope at the doorstep. Inside was a copy of a single page from my journal. And written in red ink at the bottom were the words, "No one will believe you. You're just a dirty girl who wanted attention. Stay quiet." My hands shook as I held the paper. I looked at Grace. What do I do? What if he shows this to people? What if they believe him? She touched my cheek gently. Let them talk. The truth is still the truth, no matter how loud the lies are. But I wasn't so sure anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't leave the church. I didn't go to school. Barely ate. At night I had nightmares. I dreamed of being dragged away, of no one helping me, of Mama laughing while Raymond hurt me. And then, got sick, really sick, fever, vomiting. My whole body felt like it was breaking down. The doctor said it was stress, trauma. My mind was so tired it was now making my body shut down. One night, while I lay on the couch barely able to speak, I heard voices outside the window, laughing. A step. Then something smashed against the wall. Brick. Wrapped in a cloth. Pastor John rushed outside, but the street was empty. When he opened the cloth, inside was another note. Tell her to shut up or next time it won't be a brick. I had never seen Pastor John look so angry. He called the police again. This time they said they'd assigned someone to watch the area. But I could see in their eyes, they didn't think this was serious enough. That night, I looked at Grace and said something I never thought I would say again. I want to fight back. She looked surprised. Are you sure? I nodded slowly. If I keep hiding, he wins. If I stay silent, he wins. Have to tell everyone. The truth. All of it. Grace smiled softly and hugged me. The next day, with her help, I wrote out everything again. Not in a journal this time, but on paper we could make copies of. We sent it to the police, to the local women's support center, and finally, to the radio station. A week later, they invited me to speak anonymously. I went on air. I didn't use my name, but I told my story. Every detail, every scar, every lie, every night of pain. And when I finished, I said one thing. I forgive myself. I did nothing wrong. And to every girl out there who thinks it's her fault, it's not. You are not alone. After that broadcast, something incredible happened. Other girls came forward. 2 of them, younger than me. They said Raymond had done the same to them when he stayed at their homes years ago. The police had no choice now. They reopened the case with fresh charges. But Raymond wasn't ready to lose. That's why, 2 nights later, he broke into the church again. But this time he brought a knife. And he wasn't there to scare me. He was there to end me. And what happened next changed my life forever. The wind was howling that night, as if the heavens already knew what was coming. The power had gone out across the neighborhood, something common during storms. Inside the church house, Grace lit candles while Pastor John checked the locks, extra cautious since Raymond's last attack. I was lying on the couch, a Bible beside me, my hands still shaking from the fear I lived in every day. But I was determined not to break again. Not this time. Then we heard it. Glass shattering. A loud crash from the back window. Pastor John ran toward the noise. But before he could even get close, Raymond was already inside. His eyes were wild. His hands clutched a kitchen knife, shiny and sharp. "Where is she?" he screamed. "She's going to die tonight. If I can't shut her mouth, no one can." Pastor John tried to block him. Grace shouted for him to stop. But Raymond pushed past them like a raging animal. Then he saw me, frozen, terrified, too afraid to move. He stepped closer. Each step was like thunder in my ears. I couldn't scream. My throat was locked. "You ruined everything," he roared. "You turned my family against me. You turned your mother against me. You're nothing but a filthy liar." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the room. Pastor John had hit him with a wooden chair. Raymond stumbled. But not for long. He slashed wildly with a knife, cutting the air, cutting the chair, nearly cutting Grace as she screamed and pulled me into the kitchen. We locked the door behind us. But it was only a matter of time before he broke through. I looked at Grace. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "You can," she said, holding my face. "You are not a victim anymore. You are a fighter." We could hear Raymond outside the door, banging, shouting, breaking things. Then silence. For a few seconds the whole house went quiet. Too quiet. Grace reached for her phone, trying to call the police, but there was no signal. The storm outside was killing everything. Suddenly, the kitchen window shattered behind us. Raymond's hand reached through, grabbing Grace's arm. He screamed. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a hot pan from the stove, and slammed it against his wrist. He yelled in pain and fell back, disappearing into the dark. We ran. We ran out the front door, into the storm, rain pouring on our faces. Pastor John met us outside, blood on his shoulder. He had been cut, but he was okay. Raymond didn't follow us. Not this time. The police arrived 20 minutes later. By then he was gone. Vanished into the night like a shadow. They searched for days, but no one saw him. He had disappeared. But I wasn't safe. Not really. Every day after that, I jumped at small noises. Barely slept. Every time the doorbell rang, my heart skipped a beat. Then came the court date. Raymond had finally been caught by police hiding in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. He looked thinner, wilder, and completely lost. I had to face him in court. I was terrified, but I was ready. Grace came with me. Pastor John too. Even my school counselor was there. And so were 2 other girls he had hurt. We stood together. The courtroom was cold, but I stood strong. When I told my story before the judge, I didn't cry. I didn't whisper. I spoke. Clearly. Loudly. Like a girl who had finally found her power. Raymond didn't even look at me. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for abuse, assault, and attempted murder. The room clapped when it was over. But I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I walked out of that courtroom with a heavy heart. Because the people who should have stood by me, my own mother, hadn't. And that pain doesn't go away with a prison sentence. Weeks passed. I moved in permanently with Grace and Pastor John. They helped me enroll in a new school, in a new town. I was given a new start. But sometimes when the lights flickered, I still remembered that night. The knife. The screams. The feeling of being hunted like an animal. I was healing, yes. But scars remain. One Saturday morning I got a letter. The handwriting was familiar. It was from my mother. I sat under the tree in the backyard and opened it slowly. Her words were cold, blaming, twisting the truth. She said I had embarrassed the family, that people were laughing at her in the market, that if I had just kept quiet, none of this would have happened. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. I just said softly to myself, "She doesn't own my truth anymore." And I threw the letter into the fire pit. Later that evening, Grace took me to a youth gathering. There were other girls there. Some happy, some quiet, some just like me, hiding behind fake smiles. I stood to speak. I told them my story again. But this time I added something new. The people who hurt you might never say sorry. People who should love you might leave. But you can choose to survive. You can choose to live. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And soon they were all standing, clapping, smiling, crying. That night as we drove home, I looked at the sky and whispered again, "Thank you, God, for saving me at that bridge." But just as I thought I was finally safe, one of the girls I met that night called me the next morning, with a voice full of tears. She said Raymond had also hurt her years ago. And she had never told anyone until she heard my story. And now, her own mother was threatening to kick her out for speaking up, just like mine did to me. And that's when I realized, my battle wasn't over. It was just the beginning. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling as her voice cracked through the speaker. "He hurt me too," she whispered, barely able to breathe. "When I was 10. He stayed in our house for a few weeks. I never told anyone. Not even my mom. I remembered her face from the youth gathering. A quiet girl named Emily. She had been sitting alone, hugging herself, eyes wide with pain. She had clapped when I finished speaking, but she never spoke to me that night. Till now. And now, she was crying. My mom said if I lie about him she'll throw me out, Emily said. She said I'm a disgrace. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. The pain in her voice. It took me back to my own mother's words. You deserve it. You're bringing shame. No, Emily, I whispered. You are not the shame. What he did is. She broke down. And I stayed on the line with her until the sun rose. That morning, I knew I couldn't be silent anymore. It wasn't just about me. There were others. So many others living in fear, in silence, being told by their own families that their pain wasn't real. I asked Grace if Emily could stay with us. Without hesitation, she said yes. By evening, Emily arrived with a plastic bag and red eyes. She had nowhere else to go. Her mother had screamed at her and called her a liar. So she ran. I gave her my bed and told her she was safe now. But that night, as we sat in the kitchen with cups of hot chocolate, Emily whispered something that chilled my bones. I think there are more girls. I looked at her. She nodded. When I told my cousin what happened, she froze. She didn't say anything, but I saw it in her face. She's hiding something too. My heart ached. How many? How many girls had Raymond hurt? How many had stayed silent? And how many had mothers who turned their backs? We couldn't let it continue. So I spoke to Pastor John and Grace. We came up with a plan. We would host another youth gathering, but this time it would be private. For girls only. And they could come and share freely without fear. No names. No recordings. Just a circle of truth. Flyers went out quietly. Word spread through trusted teachers and counselors. A week later, over 20 girls showed up. Some didn't speak. Some couldn't stop crying. And 7 of them, shared their stories of abuse. 5 of them had been hurt by Raymond. And none of them had told anyone before. One girl said it happened 10 years ago. Another said her own brother didn't believe her, even when he saw the bruises. The pain in that room was heavy, like the walls themselves were weeping. I sat in the center and said what I wish someone had said to me years ago. You are not your pain. You are not what he did. You are not a lie. You are not disgusting. You are survivors. You are more than what they tried to take from you. We cried together. We held hands. We promised to keep speaking. Later that night, Emily hugged me and said, "You saved me." I shook my head. No. God saved me, so I could help save you. But things didn't get easier. 2 days later I got a visit from Mama. Grace was out buying groceries, and Pastor John was at church. I was alone in the front yard, watering the flowers, trying to feel something normal again. Then she came walking down the street like a storm cloud. Her face was hard. Froze. "What are you doing?" she spat. "Gathering other people's daughters now. Turning everyone against me and your uncle." I didn't speak. "I heard what you've been saying on the radio. You think you're famous now." She laughed bitterly. "You think you're a saint." "No," I finally said. "I just don't want anyone else to go through what I did." "You ruined your own family," she hissed. "You're nothing but a bitter little girl with a loud mouth." I turned away. "I forgive you," I said softly. She stopped. "What?" "I forgive you," I repeated louder this time, tears burning my eyes. "Not because you said sorry. Not because you deserve it. But because I need to be free. And holding on to your hate keeps me chained." Her lips trembled. But she didn't say a word. She turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. That night Emily and I sat outside looking at the stars. "Do you think we'll ever be normal again?" she asked. "Thought about it." "No," I said. "But maybe we don't have to be. Maybe we can be better than normal. Maybe we can be strong. Brave. Free." She smiled. But as I stood up to go inside, a car pulled up in front of the house. The headlights blinded us. A man stepped out. It was Raymond's cousin, Paul. He looked angry, like he had been drinking. "I just came to warn you," he said, pointing at me. "You better stop talking. The family's tired of hearing your voice everywhere. Raymond's already in prison. What more do you want? Revenge?" I stepped forward. "I want the truth out," I said. "So nobody else has to suffer in silence." Paul clenched his fists. "Keep pushing," he said, "and you'll get someone else hurt. Maybe that little girl inside." Emily stepped beside me. "I'm not scared of you," she said. Paul laughed coldly. "You should be." Then he got in his car and drove off. Grace came back minutes later and saw our pale faces. She listened as we told her what happened. That night she filed a restraining order. But fear crept back into our hearts. Because we knew this wasn't over. We had exposed darkness. And now the darkness wanted to fight back. But I wasn't the same girl who stood on that bridge ready to end her life. I had found my strength. And I was about to use it in a way that would shock the whole town. 'Cause the next thing I did was write a letter to every parent, every teacher, every leader in our community. And what I wrote would break everything wide open. I saw my mother's door open as I staggered into the house. My body ached, my legs felt weak, and my heart pounded fast. The moment I entered, she stood up from the stool and looked at me like I had just caused her a great shame. "Where have you been, Mary?" she asked, her arms folded tightly. I opened my mouth to speak, but my lips trembled. My whole body was still in shock from what Uncle Daniel had done to me again. "I was with Uncle Daniel," I whispered. She frowned and threw her hands in the air. "So now you go around seducing men. Even your uncle. Is that what you've become?" Froze. My tears spilled again. "He forced me again, Mama. I didn't want it. I tried to fight, I swear." She walked up to me and slapped me hard. "Don't lie to me. You think I don't know your ways. Always walking around the house with your foolish tight clothes. Always seeking attention. I warned you before." I fell to the floor, holding my cheek. My head rang from the slap. "Mama, why are you saying this?" He pointed to the door. "You should be grateful he didn't tell your father before he died. You bring shame to this house, Mary. Just like your whore of a grandmother." I was shattered. I ran to my small room, lay on the bed and cried. My tears soaked my pillow. My mother hated me. The only person I thought would protect me blamed me instead. I hugged my pillow and screamed into it. That night I didn't eat. My mother made dinner and didn't even call me to the table. I was invisible to her. Days passed, and she acted like I didn't exist. She cleaned, cooked, and talked to everyone in the house except me. Uncle Daniel came around and greeted her like nothing happened. I avoided him. I ran into the bathroom when I heard his voice. I felt like I was going crazy. I began to think maybe I was cursed. One morning I woke up and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were puffy, my face was pale, and my body had small bruises I had been hiding. I turned on the tap and splashed water on my face. I was tired. I wrote a letter that morning. It said, "If anyone finds this, tell God I tried. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be safe. But I was never enough. Tell my mother she finally got what she wanted. No more shame. Sorry. Mary." I folded it and placed it under my pillow. Then I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and saw the rat poison. I stared at it for a long time. But just as I picked it up, I heard something. A small voice in my head. "Don't do it." Pause. Then another voice. "Your life is not over yet." Froze. Tears ran down my face again. I dropped the poison and fell to my knees. "God, if you're real, please help me. Please save me." At that moment I heard a knock on the front door. I stood up, quickly wiped my eyes and went to open the door. Standing there was an old woman in a long yellow dress and a bright smile. "Hello, dear. Is your name Mary?" she asked. I nodded slowly. She smiled wider. "God sent me to you." My heart skipped. She walked in and sat down gently in the sitting room. Who are you? Asked. My name is Mrs. Grace. I run a center for girls like you, she said. Your classmate Anna told me about you. She said you haven't been coming to school. She said she was worried. My lips trembled. She looked around, then leaned close. Tell me the truth, Mary. Are you safe in this house? I shook my head and started crying again. She reached out, held my hands, and looked into my eyes. You don't have to stay here anymore. Gasped. What do you mean? I can help you. But you have to trust me. I'll talk to people who can get you out of here. I'll speak to a social worker. But you have to be brave. Just then my mother entered the house. She stopped when she saw Mrs. Grace. Who are you? She asked sharply. Mrs. Grace stood calmly. I'm someone who helps girls in trouble. My mother frowned. There's no trouble here. You should leave. Mrs. Grace smiled. I don't think that's for you to decide. My mother charged at her. Get out of my house before I call the police. Mrs. Grace calmly brought out her phone and pressed a button. You should know I've already called child services. They're on their way. At that moment my mother turned pale. Suddenly we heard sirens from outside. Police and child services had arrived. My mother screamed. Mary, what have you done? The officers entered, asking questions. Mrs. Grace calmly explained everything. I was taken into a car. As we drove away, I saw my mother crying and shouting in the compound, calling me ungrateful. But I didn't feel sad. For the first time in my life I felt free. I looked at Mrs. Grace beside me. Thank you, she smiled. God saved you today, Mary. He's not finished with you. Just as I smiled back, I heard a whisper in my heart again. You were made for more. We arrived at the shelter, a place filled with girls like me. They welcomed me, hugged me, and showed me a warm bed. Felt safe. But just when I thought the worst was over, that night, as I was about to sleep, someone sneaked into the shelter. It was Uncle Daniel. And he had a knife. My husband, Walter, came back home the day after the police left. He had been hiding with a distant cousin, too much of a coward to face the truth. When he entered the house, he didn't look ashamed. He looked angry. Why did you bring the police into this family? He growled. I stood firm, holding a frying pan not to hurt him, but because I was shaking too much to feel safe. Because you all broke me. Shouted. You watched your own uncle ruin me. Then you joined in. And now I have nothing left to lose. Walter's face twisted with rage. You think you're so righteous now. You want to pretend you didn't enjoy it back then. That moment made me feel like the floor opened beneath my feet. Even after all that happened, he still blamed me. Still believed it was something I wanted. I screamed and threw the pan at the wall, breaking it. Get out. Get out of this house. I don't care where you go, just leave. Walter turned and left, slamming the door so hard the whole house shook. My breathing was heavy. My heart was pounding like a loud drum. For the first time in months I sat down and wept. Not out of fear, not out of pain, but because I had finally screamed. I had finally said something. And even though no one clapped or comforted me, I felt something lift off my shoulders. But peace didn't stay long. That night I received a phone call. It was from a blocked number. You really thought you could run your mouth and not suffer for it? A voice whispered. We're coming for you. Be ready. Froze. My hand dropped the phone. Was it Walter, Uncle, or someone else? I didn't sleep that night. I stayed near the door, holding the same frying pan, eyes wide open, waiting for a knock or worse. The next morning came without attack, but my nerves were fried. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. It was soaked with trauma. I had to go somewhere safe, somewhere they would never find me. I packed a few clothes in a small bag and carried my Bible. That's all I could trust now. I walked to a church I had passed many times but never entered. I didn't know anyone there, but something pulled me toward it. When I entered, the choir was rehearsing. Their soft voices brought tears to my eyes. I sat quietly in the last row and wept. An older woman named Sister Ruth saw me and came over. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I couldn't answer. I only sobbed louder. She sat beside me and rubbed my back until I could speak. "I have no one," I whispered. "My family broke me. I wanted to die. But God didn't let me." She held my hand. "Then that means He still has a purpose for you." Her words felt like medicine. It was the first time someone believed I mattered. Sister Ruth took me to the pastor. I didn't tell them every detail, but I told them enough. They gave me a small room in the church compound to stay in temporarily. That night, I slept in peace for the first time in years. I didn't jump at every sound. I didn't fear who would enter the door. But just as I was beginning to feel safe, tragedy struck again. One Sunday evening, I went to the small store across from the church to get tea. When I returned, my room was on fire. Flames rose high, smoke filled the air, and people were shouting. The mattress, my clothes, everything gone. Even my Bible turned to ashes. I stood there barefoot, trembling. The firefighters said it was arson. Someone had poured kerosene through the window and lit a match. I knew who it was. Walter. He must have followed me. The fear returned, but this time I didn't run. I turned to Sister Ruth and said, "I want to report this." She nodded. "Then we'll go together." We went to the police. I gave them names, details, everything I had held back before. The police said they would investigate but warned me, "This may not be safe for you. Do you have somewhere else to go?" I didn't. But Sister Ruth said I could stay with her. She lived in a small, quiet town far away. "It's peaceful there," she said. "No one will know your past unless you tell them." So I went with her. That night, as we left the city, I looked out the window and felt both sadness and relief. I was leaving behind all the pain, but also the only life I had ever known. When we arrived in the town, it felt like another world. Quiet streets, friendly faces, children riding bikes, women selling fruits without fear. Sister Ruth gave me a small room in her home. I started helping her with chores and later joined her at the women's prayer group. Slowly I began to heal. I told my story to women who also had scars. Some cried with me. Some prayed for me. Some just held my hand. And day by day, my heart began to believe again. Believe that I mattered. I even started working in the church nursery, playing with children and singing to them. But just when things were getting better, one afternoon changed everything. A stranger showed up at the church gates. He wore a hat, his back hunched, pretending to be a beggar. But I recognized those eyes. It was Walter. I dropped the baby I was holding, thankfully onto a cushion, and ran to the pastor's office. "He's here," I gasped. "He found me." The pastor stood up immediately and called the police. Sister Ruth locked the doors, and the other women gathered the children inside. But Walter didn't come to talk. He came with fire. Again. He had a bottle of petrol. He threw it at the church gate and lit a match. Flames roared. People screamed. But the fire didn't spread fast. The police came quickly this time. They caught Walter before he could run. They found a knife in his pocket and a letter in his coat. It read, "If I can't have her, no one will." They arrested him, and this time there was no escaping justice. He was charged with attempted murder, arson, and stalking. I sat in the courtroom weeks later, holding Sister Ruth's hand. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. "For years," I began, my voice trembling, "I was hurt by people who should have protected me. My uncle, my husband, my mother. I thought my life was over. But God saved me. Not once, but again and again. So I will not be silent. I forgive you, Walter. But I will never forget what you did." The courtroom was quiet. Walter looked down. No smirk. No words. Just shame. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison. I cried, not for him but for myself. For that broken girl I used to be. For the years I lost. But also for the hope I now had. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high. But as I stepped out, someone approached me and said something that shook my world again. Something that would change the course of my life forever. I sat by the window, watching the sun slowly rise over the hills, wondering if this would finally be the day I felt free. But freedom didn't come easy. Came with tears, pain, and scars. I still carried the memory of my uncle's filthy hands. I still heard my mother's voice telling me I deserved it. I still woke up some nights with sweat all over my body and my chest tight with fear. But I was still alive. And that meant God wasn't finished with me. After I ran from that house and found shelter at the church, Pastor Brian and his wife Mary became like parents to me. They took me in, gave me a place to sleep, fed me, and helped me get back into school. I was quiet for the first few weeks. I didn't talk to anyone. I just stared into space, wondering why I was still breathing. Then one day, during morning prayers, Pastor Brian said something that stayed in my heart forever. He said, "Sometimes God allows pain so he can birth purpose. And when the world throws you away, God picks you up and shows the world that you matter." I cried the whole day. For the first time someone said I mattered. That I wasn't a burden. That I wasn't disgusting. I started talking to a counselor that Pastor Brian introduced me to. Her name was Sarah, and she was very patient with me. At first I didn't say much, but she never pushed. Instead, she listened and gave me a safe space to breathe. Week by week I started opening up. I told her how my uncle abused me. How my mother stood at the door and called me a disgrace. How I once held a knife to my chest and planned to die. How only God stopped me in that moment. Sarah didn't judge me. She didn't pity me. She just said, "You survived. And that is your power." I held on to those words. Meanwhile, the police were searching for my uncle. Pastor Brian had reported him the same night I ran into the church. But he had fled the town. My mother was also called for questioning, but she lied to the police, saying I made everything up. That I was a troubled girl looking for attention. It broke my heart again. My own mother, still choosing a lie over me. Still protecting the man who broke me. But I had something new now, courage. So I stood before the police, before a court, before everyone who doubted me, and I told the truth. I told them everything. The judge listened quietly, watching me with kind eyes. The lawyer asked questions, but I answered them all. My voice didn't shake. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to be heard. Then, 1 month later, they found my uncle hiding in another town. He had changed his name, but someone recognized his face from the wanted posters and called the police. He was arrested and brought back to stand trial. When I saw him in court, I felt a cold shiver run through my body. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes still had that same evil in them. He smirked when he saw me. But I didn't look away. I held my head up and stared back. This time I had God. I had truth. And I had people who believed in me. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Evidence was presented. And I gave my testimony again. My mother refused to show up. But I didn't need her anymore. The truth was enough. In the end, the judge sentenced my uncle to 25 years in prison. I thought I would feel happy, but I didn't. I just felt relieved. Relieved that I didn't let the darkness win. That I didn't let death steal my story. That I was alive. Months passed, and I continued school. I started sharing my story at church. First just during youth gatherings. Then bigger events. Then I was invited to speak in other towns. People cried when they heard what I had gone through, but they also saw something else in me. Hope. I met other girls like me, young, broken, forgotten. I told them the same thing Sarah told me. You survived. And that is your power. Some days were still hard. I still cried sometimes. I still had nightmares. But I also smiled again. I laughed again. I even danced again. And then one Sunday morning, after giving a speech to a group of young women in another city, something beautiful happened. A little girl, no more than 10, walked up to me and hugged me tight. She whispered, "Thank you for saving me. I wanted to die too, but now I don't." I broke down in tears right there. That was the moment I realized. My pain had purpose. I had become the woman I once needed. I still hadn't spoken to my mother in all that time. But one evening 2 years later I received a call. It was her. Her voice shook as she said, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I didn't protect you. I was a coward." I didn't know what to say. My heart beat so fast I thought it would burst. She continued, "I've been seeing a pastor, and I want to be forgiven. But only if you can." Silence. Then I said, "I forgive you, but I can't go back to who we were. I've changed." She cried and thanked me. And though I didn't feel close to her again, I felt peace in my heart. I had chosen healing, not hatred. I had chosen to live, not die. I had chosen to rise. And God, yes, God, had saved me when nobody else would. Now I tell my story to every woman, every child, every broken soul who thinks their life is over. I tell them it's not over. 'Cause if God could save me, He can save anyone. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs hope. You never know who you might save just by sharing a story. Let's keep spreading light in this world. See you in the next video. God bless you.